Let's call the meeting to order.
Trustee Lawrence?
Here.
Trustee Lawler? Absent. Trustee Leafblat? Here. Trustee Healy?
Here.
Trustee Katsinas?
Here.
Trustee Malani?
Here.
Mayor Dodge.
Here.
We have a quorum at 6 o'clock. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes, approval of the July 7th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of July 7th, 2025.
Second.
So motion and a second. Any questions or changes? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Lawrence?
Aye.
Trustee Lawler is absent. Trustee Leafblat?
Aye.
Trustee Healy? Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Dodge.
Aye.
Non-scheduled citizens and visitors for agenda-specific public comment.
Is there any comments about agenda items on the Committee of the Whole? Okay.
Okay, so we'll proceed to E, items for separate action. Number 1, subdivision acceptance procedure for discussion only. Engineering.
George Kershid.
Good evening, Mayor and the board. This is a discussion item where any development we have or subdivision, we have a timeline where we start accepting it into the village, such as the stormwater system, roadway lighting, and all of that. There is not a specific timeline defined in our code. We generally have used when the project is 80% complete, but that has not worked well in terms of when are the buildings are occupied or units are occupied. So we have brought this here for a policy discussion only, that we are requesting that the board allow us to start a subdivision or a commercial development acceptance timeline when the buildings are 90%, have 90% certificate of occupancy.
I have a couple questions. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy?
Kershid, I understand it's also at the election of the village engineer about when things should be released. Who are you the village engineer, or is it Robinson, or?
No. We are the village engineer. We have actually Aladdin Hussain. He's the village engineer, officially village engineer position, but it happens through my department, and I make the final decision on those.
So and I just want to get this straight. So if these developers have a lot of money tied up in these developments when they put in the common improvements, and so a sewer fee or whatever that's connected and people are using it and it's 80% working, I mean, you should release part of that sewer. You should accept it and release their the hold on their line of credit.
So, Trustee Healy, we release as soon as they finish any portion of the public improvement, and they make a request to us that, hey, we have completed this, let's say, roadway or storm sewer or pond, whatever the completion is, and then we do our inspection, and once we accept it, then we release it. We do not wait until the end of the project.
Okay, so we don't have to wait for 90%.
No, not at all, not at all. This request, Trustee Healy, is when we as a village accept a subdivision under our jurisdiction. Until then, the developer are responsible for maintaining it, cleaning it, snowplow, whatever the other elements that they have. Until then, it is their responsibility. But once we accept it, then it becomes our responsibility.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Any other comments or questions? Kershid, just again, right, why in your opinion is 90% better than 80%?
So what we have seen is on some of the smaller subdivision projects where they may only have 5 units or 4 units, putting in 80% keeps us, like, it delays the process of accepting that subdivision. There are some few, but this is why if you look at our request, we have requested that allows us to maybe accept it at 80% or maybe even push it up to 95%, having that flexibility in there. But as a general rule or general guideline, we like to start at 90%.
Got it, thank you. And I guess, Steve, in some of our conversations, a lot of, except for a couple of large landholders, most of the future development in Orland is going to be on relatively smaller parcels, correct?
Correct.
So this is probably net helpful?
Yes.
It will be.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Leafblad, excuse me.
I do have a question. My understanding as I was looking through everything is that if it's at 90%, you're less likely, if the village then has to plow the roads or whatever the case may be, you're less likely to be confronted with large machinery in the way and things like that, because those larger jobs have been completed, and now it becomes easier for the village to maintain it and get to portions of whatever that property is that the village is required to maintain. Is that, do I understand that?
That's definitely is one reason. For example, if I could, many of the developers will pave the road but not put the final top 1 inch. They wait for that until everything is done, so that if there are any cracks or anything like that or settlement, that they can address it. So definitely in that context, those larger machineries will get that piece done, and then we can come in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? This is a discussion item.
Okay. Next, discussion of residential density calculation methods.
Steve, we all know how this is important. It's not the snazziest title ever.
Yeah, I know. It's like so exciting because I like bring all the, like, he's got fun in Parks and Rec, and I've got fun in a different way with math. So we just would like to talk about some of the ways that we calculate how much can go on a lot. And then generally there's like 2 methods. So one is the number of units of something for housing based off of the number of acres, or by bulk, which is FAR, which is not what we're talking about. That's floor area ratio. That's the number of the square foot of the building over the total size. We're only going to be focusing on units per acre. So that's what we're here to talk about.
Steve, as you go forward, so we're clear, we're not changing density tonight. This is just about the calculation methods.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the issues we've been having. All right, so we've been getting inquiries from single-family attached and detached housing, not really regarding apartments. The apartments are happening in the center section of town, as it's a completely different way of calculating how much is going there, and it's mostly in the residential districts. And we're looking to both. So I want to talk about the ways that the methods that we have bring down the number of units that a developer can do, and also increase the number of units. So we can talk about the whole discussion about how much can go someplace. So just before we get started, we did survey the towns around us. Frankfurt, Lamont, and New Lenox, they basically say this is the size of the land, and just say if you're allowed this many units per acre, that's their starting point, flat out. Homer Glen and Mokina do something similar to what we do. Tinley Park, I think they just didn't update something. So they do reference net density, and it's actually families per net acre, but they don't reference net acre anywhere in their ordinance. I'm assuming they should probably be in the top, but we're just going to let them go to the side because I don't know how to interpret what their ordinance actually says. All right, so let's just kind of get the ground level here. So first we've got the base density, and this is what's defined in each district of the number of units that you're allowed by right. Again, it's units. In our case, it's net buildable acre. And a net buildable acre is the size of the property minus things that we pull out of there for very specific deductions, and I'll go over those. And then we have bonuses that we have in planned developments, and that if you meet these criteria, you can increase the number of units per acre. So let's talk, and this is, so the middle column is the only thing I want to be concerned about here. Our densities are pretty low. So R3 is what most of the village, or the most prominent residential zoning category, and that's at 2.5 units per acre. So that's probably about a 15,000 square foot lot or
Steve,
so.
what, the net DUAC, can you
It's
explain that?
Net dwelling units per acre, or in our case, it's net dwelling acre, yeah. Net dwelling
And
units
Steve,
per
just one additional clarification, just, when we say net, that means after any park, after any ponds, after any roads are
that's what I'm
built.
talking
this is
about right
Net houses.
Correct.
Just so we're clear. Thank
All
you.
right, so this is the way we calculate net. So we have the area of the lot or the farm or whatever it is, and then we subtract out certain things. And these things kind of fall into two categories. So one is something that you know when you buy the property. So I buy a property and there's power lines going across it. And in some parts of town, although it isn't very much, those are not owned by ComEd. They're actually owned by the landowner and there's an easement. Then there's a deduction that's subtracted out when you give a park or a school dedication. And then that is an unknown because they don't know when they're buying the lot how much land they're going to need to dedicate. So that's a question mark for the purchaser. Then there's right of way that's like on the edges. So let's just say it's 143rd Street and we want to make it wider. We deduct the area that they're dedicating from the number of units they could build. So they could build less units by giving us the land to help widen the road. Then we've got stuff that's in a floodplain, which is generally known. We don't want people building in a floodplain. And usually the price is adjusted for that. And then there's areas for detention and retention. This is where stormwater goes, right? Big issue in this town, very cognizant of that. But if you put in a pond, which is open, you get penalized and you get to build less units. And if you bury it and don't have the advantage of the pond, for instance, or the park, then you get more units. So that's something we also want to kind of fix. And then wetlands are, again, something that's generally known before you purchase the property. I'm not going to go crazy through this. Then there's things that we add. So our big issue with this is that it's kind of really out of date. And I'll just go through some of these. So like one of them is you get a bonus for every 1,200 feet of boulevard. That's about a quarter mile. Well, we don't really want boulevards that much because they're a pain to plow. The fire trucks have problems with it. It takes away the roadway width. You can't park on the street. And then a quarter mile is quite a lot. And like, I think our maximum we're going to be getting moving forward on residential developments is about 20 acres, which is like a half mile or a quarter mile by an eighth of a mile. It's not a reasonable bonus. So we've got the boulevard treatments that I just mentioned. We've got views of open space and forests and valleys. Like these are all really good things, but I don't know how to measure this. Like how do I know that you meet this criteria? And how many of the units have to meet this criteria if we're going to give you the bonus? So it's kind of vague. We also have orientation for solar heating. Great idea, but does that mean that I've got to count the areas of just the sides of the roofs that are slanted, that are facing south? Works well in Chicago when you're on a grid and all your houses are long and skinny, but doesn't work for curvilinear streets and roof lines that are interesting that we like to have in our town. Also, we've got this thing about garage doors not facing the street. Totally okay with this. Easy to measure. It's either facing the street or not facing the street. Then we have these issues that deal with lampposts and pavement types and signs and variations in the development, which are really, really cool until it's time to fix it or replace it. So let's just say they embed a nice mosaic into the street, and then 30 years later, it's time to redo the street. Probably unlikely we're going to put the mosaic back. So then the benefit is now gone forever. So it's not really, it's a great idea, something that's cool, but I don't know if it's something that we could be using for measuring. Because what I'm going to do, like knock down 5 houses because now the density went down when the special, or the lamps are another thing, lampposts. We don't want to keep 10 different types of lampposts in stock in case someone runs into one. Okay, so here's some challenges. So our base density is pretty low, and we can do another study and give you more information on this, but relatively to other towns, it's pretty low. Our net buildable acres penalizes the developers for giving us stuff that we want, which is a problem. And then our bonuses encourage things that are difficult to measure or things that we don't want. So I think we need to overhaul this so that we can actually adjust it for giving people a bonus for something that we actually want. And that could be all kinds of different things, and we can have a future discussion about that if you want to kind of go down that road. So we kind of like, one option is we kind of partially scale back. You know, like we already said, we have 2 groups. So one is things that you know when you buy the property, like there is a wetland here. I know I'm not going to build on a wetland unless I move it and pay the credits and do all that kind of complicated stuff. I know that this is in a floodplain. I'm not going to build in a floodplain because I'm not going to be able to get insurance. And then the things that are benefits to us, which they get, you know, lower benefit from. for building less units of housing and less profit. So it doesn't encourage them to do these things that we want. All right, and here's just an example. So here's a lot. It's got a big pond on it. And when these people, like if this development was to come forward, we would have to subtract out about a quarter of the base that we calculate the density on, and they would lose units for giving us the pond. But again, if they buried it in a tank, like we did at Dugan Park or along the street or under the sidewalk, then they would get to build a lot more units and we don't get the benefit of the openness. So that's, again, an example of something we want to create visually or want to fix visually. So density is based on overall site area. If we go to gross area, it's super easy to calculate. There's no risk. It also aligns with our other newer districts. So as we've created new zones, the ones that have the design guidelines, like our DCD and our core, which is what's up and down most of LaGrange Road, we don't calculate things this way. It's based off of the gross lot area. It's more predictable for the developer for infill sites because there's a lot of unknowns on small lots and where you can put things, there's less options. And it also reduces the need for variances. So let's just say that there might be a good reason to give people more, and we let this person have more, but then we don't let the next person have more. That may not be a consistent or good policy for the village board. Again, it is totally within your right to do so, though. We already talked about our neighbors. So what we're kind of asking is feedback on what direction you want us to head. We can leave things the same. We can do all kinds of stuff. But we want to reevaluate in some way the use of net buildable acres. We want to discuss updates to our bonus system to give us something for stuff we actually want. And we can have a brainstorming discussion about that, or we can, and then just in general, an open discussion over the forum and to answer any questions you might have, because this is not like third grade material.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Trustee Leaflet?
Yeah, and my understanding of this, and please let me know if I'm incorrect, is that essentially the way it is now, you're saying it's out of date, and it actually requires like somebody who wants to develop a subdivision, requires them to do a lot more evaluating and calculating in advance before they can really even know if the property is viable for what they want to do, or will have enough, will be able to put in enough houses or whatever on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, to be able to, they've got a balance sheet, right? For us, it's about housing and new residents. For the developer, it's a business. They do want to build neighborhoods, many of them, they talk about place building, but there's a lot more questions because we haven't done an evaluation of their proposal until after they've already put time and money into the project.
And in addition to that, we have, as it is right now, it actually feels more like they're being penalized than not when they do things that the village would like to see or requires. And this new way of doing it would make it more beneficial, like would make it in their best interests to actually construct certain things in a certain way as the village would like to see it?
It's two things. So one of it is that, and then there's also this level of risk because they don't know what our ask is going to be, and it's hard for them. They're going to make an offer on a property, and it may turn out that the deal dies. And we don't have like a huge booming number of residential home subdivisions, single-family homes, or even the townhomes. We have some, but not a ton. So, and I'm not saying we have to grow fast, but not all the developments that come through my department ever make it for you guys to see.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Katsinas?
Steve, do you see any negative towards, incoming new homeowners or existing homeowners with these changes? I mean, what would be the potential negatives? I'm all for looking out for the developer. I think we have to look out for the residents as well. So what is this in their best interest? Do you see any negative from this?
So we've already talked with Marcus about this, and we've done some preliminary calculations on some neighborhoods. Most neighborhoods are above what we would currently allow already. So like if a tornado came through, we've got to decide which of you are building your houses back and which of you aren't, because now you're only allowed this many units. That's never a good thing for insurance, and I'm not saying that's a huge problem here. It's one thing to think about, but I would say that what we currently allow in the zones is probably in more circumstances than not, less than what is in those neighborhoods now. in another R3, for instance, if I have an R3 proposal in an R3.
Excuse me, we're not talking about anything to do with changing like an R4 with 10,000 square feet minimum. That's still remaining.
Yes, that part's still staying the same, yeah. It's just about what we're calculating the base on.
Right, understood. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Malani?
I mean, kind of thinking through this and thinking, I think we had a recent situation where we actually had to change a development because they were either bringing us something where there were too many units or not enough units. I think it might have been the one by Costco, right? I think.
That was a townhome development
The
over,
townhome
yeah.
development, right. There
Where
were like
they had like,
Too many units.
they had too many units, but they had like over 50% open space.
Right.
And
so
they
it
were
didn't make
over,
sense.
they were over the density, even though they were half open space.
Right. So they were able to come back and they gave us a new plan and it was able to fit, but kind of at their detriment a little bit. But then there's also less inventory for people that want a townhome, right? So it's like there's a trade-off, right?
Yes.
So if we look at this whole gross area versus, I guess, is there a way that we can do a combination of both, or is it literally you kind of go one or the other?
So the first group, so there's the things that you know and the things that you don't know. That could be a midway to do this if that's the way you want to do it. And we'll say, okay, we'll still subtract out wetlands and, I mean, they still have to buy the land. It's not worth zero.
Right.
Right? But then you're saying, we're not going to do anything on that. I mean, again, this is all up to you. It's a policy decision. But, oh yeah, sorry.
Because, yeah, I mean, I could see, buying a piece of land, and yeah, you've got the utility easement or a pipeline going right through the middle of it. You can't do anything with that land, right? But you want to develop it and grow it, so it's like,
There, it's just, yeah. So, yeah, the ones that are the known are the ones that at least they have some kind of awareness of when they're purchasing the land.
right, okay. And then, for some of these, like, I think, our chairman here, Mr. Mayor, I can't even think straight today. The mayor mentioned, there are some circumstances where we have some large developments, but we haven't seen movement on those in the 50 years that the.
Yeah, we have one large landowner that has most of our unbuilt land.
Right.
And that would be residential. And then there's the Pulte development, which is probably the second largest from the now we're down to like probably 20 acres or less.
So large scale.
Or very small developments. I mean, if there's 4 houses they want to come in, it turns out they can only build 3.
Right.
Because they've got to put in all this like a big, yeah, that's where we start getting into, well, now that's a huge chunk of, that's a 25% of what I thought I was going to make, and now I don't pencil.
Okay, so we're not looking at another Brook Hills, we're looking more along the lines of here's another Villas of Tallgrass type of a thing, where we're gonna put this piece in this piece of land that we have. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Lawrence?
Steve, you joke about this being a little bit of a math problem. I
It actually
see-
is a math problem, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm rather comfortable with math, and your explanation was very clear. It makes a lot of sense to me, and the idea that we would review our incentives, detractions, and adders makes a lot of sense, too.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, Steve, thank you. I think we should obviously schedule some more time on this topic, and I have a couple of specific asks for you, which is just so we can anchor all the future discussions for both approaches to calculating density, do that for the entire village as built now.
Ooh, every subdivision?
Yeah. This is an R4, that's an R, where I'm going with this one is we need to come back and anchor the future conversation and what we want to do with what we've already built so people don't misconstrue what's being discussed here tonight. And I'd like visual examples for all of these so that people know what R3 means, both an aerial and on a streetscape. These are for public release and discussion. And then, as been alluded to with this board, let's make sure in future conversations of this, because we're not going to get this done tomorrow, let's talk about the other implications. So if I heard you correctly, if we crisp all of this up and it's really clear and it becomes this plus this divided by that equals an outcome, let's get that out there to developer communities so that they understand exactly how we're going to be calculating these densities and what we do or do not, basically the policy for what we'll approve, so that when they walk in and approach the village, they approach your staff, there are less unknowns in that process.
Right.
Push that decision-making to them before they start offering land. So just get rid of some of the unknowns with the transparency that you're proposing. So as you go forward with this, let's just get that into a tight policy and push it out.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Lawrence?
may I respectfully suggest that we perhaps consider sampling of neighborhoods? I have no idea what sort of data you have and in what form and how difficult it would be to do. Maybe that's an item for discussion.
It would probably be much easier for us to calculate gross. We have a map of neighborhoods. If we did gross density, that would be much easier. I could just units divided by size. I
Okay.
could give you a pretty easy graphic of that.
Okay, so it's not
Try to go back
unwieldy.
and figure out if
I,
each development.
I guess, thank you, Trustee Lawrence. Appreciate the idea, but I guess, Steve, you're going to have to come back and build a compelling case that that math is not doable.
Okay. I'll work on that.
This is a non-trivial
No, I
policy
agree.
implication.
That's fine.
So as we think about where we're going with Orland Park, what we're going to finish, what we're going to develop, let's just figure out that we make sure we tell the story. This is how it used to work with these various calculations and adjustments. So an example, if you want to use the word sampling, that's fine. This neighborhood had these adjustments and it looks like 3.5 net density. This neighborhood had those adjustments or bonuses. It got to 4.2 on paper, but the look and feel to people that are living in the subdivision or a developer trying to do their financial math, they understand what they're doing. And I think that's all pushable so that anybody who wants to propose a development in Orland Park knows exactly what they need to do before they come talk to us. So we can take this offline.
Okay.
Go.
Anything else?
Next item?
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
153rd Street and Ravinia Roundabout, utility discussion, engineering.
Hello, Mayor and trustees again. So as you may know, the village is currently progressing on a roundabout project at 153rd Street and Ravinia Avenue. Phase one of this project was completed over a year or so ago, and we call it a project development report, PDR, was reviewed and approved by IDOT, and that's what this discussion is about. Currently, we have some utilities that are in that intersection, and we needed some direction about how do we move forward on that. And I'll give you some details on the screen. Just quickly on that, without the utility relocation, the project is worth about $3.5 million.
Do you have a slide you want to advance?
Yes, I'm just wanted to give you a quick background on it because
Sorry, thanks, Khurshid.
So 153rd is this is the east-west, and this is Ravinia in the middle, and that's where, I'll show you as zoomed in, but this was a little bit over. What this picture is actually showing, Mayor, are the utilities that are in this area. You can see all the blue lines. The blue lines are the water mains, then there are some storm sewer, and then there are some also sanitary sewer in there as well. So the focus of our discussion today is the intersection of Ravinia and 153rd. So here is the project. If you can see that the roundabout project is superimposed over the existing utilities. The blue lines that you see, those are water mains, especially this line that goes here and then comes to the north side and then continues on. That is a major 36-inch water main, significantly larger size than others. The other two are 12-inch lines. And so, again, as you can see, all of the utilities are ending up underneath the roundabout. And the discussion is, should these utilities be relocated, or should we leave them alone, or should we find something in between? Here is a zoomed-in picture of the same. You can see how the utilities are located at this intersection. The next slide that I have it shows basically a conceptual relocated utilities. How would we basically relocate all of the utilities that are now, that will be, if we do go that route, it will be outside of the roundabout. So some of the questions we have, or before I go there, is that these are the utilities that we have. Some of the questions we have, should utilities be relocated? The estimated cost for relocating the utilities is about $800,000 as of today. Should we leave the utilities in place? Then the risk would be that for any future failure and maintenance, and how do we handle that? Or should only smaller diameter water mains be relocated? So those are some of the questions we have, and I just wanted to get some input from the village leadership. And just, this is where I was before, Mayor, is that overall the project cost is about $3.5 million as we know today. Of that, we have $2.3 million in grants that has been secured. So the village cost will be about $1.2 million if we proceed without the utilities relocated. If we add the utilities, that's about another $800,000. However, we also have some applications, grant applications submitted, and we're waiting for the response. About $1.8 million more has been requested by other grants that might be available. So I'm here to answer any questions or hopefully
Mr.
get some
Mayor?
directions.
Trustee Leafblad?
So when do you think you'll have a response with regard to the other grants that you requested?
That will be probably another 3 to 6 months, 3 months more likely, but that's the timeline that they have.
Okay, and then one other question. Is there a concern with these water mains? Are they reaching the end of some kind of statistical life, or is this just precautionary just in case?
I wouldn't say that, especially the large ones, they're not reaching the end of life, but they are 35 plus years old, and the other ones are about 20 years old. So that's but these lines can last 60 years. And I mean, I do not have any issue with that. But, so that's where we are.
Okay, and the waiting period with regard to the additional grants is consistent with your timeline in terms of constructing the roundabout, is that right?
We need to move forward on the decision, otherwise, because the project is scheduled to go for construction late next year, and everything that is sequencing in that line, if we don't make a decision today or in the next week or two, then we will be having trouble in getting those deadline met that are grant related and also controlled by IDOT.
So the grant that we currently have could be affected by the timing?
Correct. These are time-sensitive grants.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani?
question for Rashid, I guess. Focusing back on the impact, if we don't relocate these, because the existing utilities, we cross over the roundabout. And if we flip over to your proposed utilities, we're still crossing the roundabout. So what is the advantage of actually relocating?
It's a very good question, Trustee Malani. The advantage of this one is that the lines will be in the roadway. So anytime you have any, let's say, leak or failure or so, you'll be able to cut a portion of the roadway, get in, fix it, and get out and pave the road and be done. If the line is inside the roundabout that is outside at our village hall, that's a very high-end, but I wouldn't expect our new roundabout will be like that. But the challenge is that if we have to basically cut and excavate into an existing roundabout, the repair cost will be higher too.
Okay, so if you go back to the previous slide, then so where it would actually be going through the central portion of the roundabout, that's where the concern would be.
Correct. That's where they are now, as you can see.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Leafblad?
Could we, depending on what what the end result is, and let's say we decide not to move them, could we just construct the center portion of the roundabout in a manner that is uncomplicated? For example, maybe less concrete, more earth. I'm not sure what the options are.
No, you're right. The center portion of the roundabout will be landscaped. It's not going to be hard concrete. The outside, basically the periphery of the roundabout will be concrete or stamped concrete, if that's what we choose, because we need that extra space for larger trucks to roll over and then still be able to drive through. But the middle part of the roundabout will not be hardscaped.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Katsinas?
Hi, Khurshid. The other two roundabouts we have in town, what were done with them?
So the roundabout that is outside our village hall, it does not have this kind of utilities underneath it. There are some stormwater utilities that do go through it that basically collects the water, and they are part of the system, and portion of that is underneath the roundabout as well. The one on West Avenue, it does not have anything there. It just, so that roundabout is more utilitarian type roundabout, and that's why there's nothing underneath it. It's just outside of it. And then there is one more roundabout, as you know, which is privately built. It's in Orland Ridge. That does not have any major utilities underneath either, except that stormwater does have in that general area of the roundabout.
Considering the age of the pipes and the cost to do it, do you think it's cost effective, in your opinion? I mean, how many useful life remaining does it have? How many years? You know, is
So
it-
the larger pipes are definitely more complicated and difficult to relocate as well, because we would have to do it in the low consumption, water consumption timeline, which is January, February timeline. So it's just not the dollars only, but also have how and when we do it. So there's more complications to it too. Larger pipelines, in general, what the industry data shows, don't rupture or fail as often as generally the smaller lines are. That's the general I can tell you right now.
do you have a recommendation, though, your professional recommendation?
I think it's a combination of things, so I just don't want to go on the life of the pipeline or so. It's a risk that has to go with it if we leave it in. So I'm not ready at this point here to make a recommendation.
And I just wanted to thank Khurshid for all of his hard work in getting the grant money. He has done an outstanding job, not only on this project, but on other projects. So thank you, Khurshid.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy?
Khurshid, I just want to get this straight. If there was a failure, if we left things as they are and there was a failure underneath the roundabout, what would the additional cost? I mean, there's a base cost like any other street failure, but the additional cost would be how much to repair?
Could maybe Joel, because he's the one that was gonna have to work on this once it gets turned over. And Joel, maybe you can start with, we had a very large failure, what?
Oh, about a year ago, we had a failure on 151st and 82nd Ave intersection there. It was deep, large pipe, and it was well over $100,000 to get that repaired because of the impact. With the repair of this location, yes, it would probably be as costly as that. We would then also have to replace all the concrete that we rip out, and the time in the intersection will have some delays of getting through that area while that work is going through. We'd have to do detours on West Ave and Ribbon Ave and so forth, so.
So that would be 100,000 just on like 152nd Avenue, but how about any additional cost for being under?
The concrete work, and that depends on what kind of landscaping, Khurshid, if he keeps it at a minimal, then the landscaping in the middle would be at minimal cost for the landscaping portion.
Okay, and my other question is like in 35 years, that 36-inch pipeline is going to have to be replaced from the whole way, including this small.
That's a reasonable engineering expectation that at that time, not just that portion, but an entire pipeline would have to be replaced at some point in time. So that's a much larger project than what a roundabout would be.
Right, if we're gonna do that in 35 years, it's gonna replace whatever's there today. I mean, that we put in now with this roundabout, it sounds like.
I think that pipeline within the roundabout is probably not even 1% of the total pipeline that you will be looking into it. I will also add, Trustee Healy, that at 35 years timeline, the roundabout will be over with its life also. We would have to redo the concrete and everything else that needs to, it wouldn't last another 35 years. So it will be, in that timeline, 25 to 35-year timeline, that roundabout will be basically completing its life as well.
So do we spend 800,000 this year or now, or with the possibility of some grants to offset it, or gamble on 35 years?
That's exactly.
I mean,
that's-
with the reduced cost, though, I mean, you could break, it's not gonna cost 800,000 more for any particular break.
35 years down the road, it will cost us a lot more because the cost of escalation will go up significantly.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Leafblood?
I do have one more, another question. Even if we were to go ahead and move them around now, it doesn't really, it doesn't prevent things from going wrong, even if we move them around. I think what we're anticipating is easier access in the future if something were to go wrong. But whether we move it or not, even if we were to move it and change it all around, something still could go wrong, within a period of time.
And you're right, something still could go wrong. It's just like you said, it's easier and cheaper to get in and get out, and also a bit quicker.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Lawrence?
Rashid, if this work is done and 35 years down the road or whatever it is, the extended area needs to be replaced as a matter of this is what we're going to do, would you leave in place what you just did, in 2026 or whatever, or would it all be done?
So if 35 years down the road, so you will have this portion of the pipe that will be 35 years old. The rest will be 70 years old. So because it's such a small portion of the pipe, at that time, I would recommend that the entire piece be
Got it,
replaced.
okay.
Any other comments or questions? Khurshid, just so we're thinking about this, and I think this has been alluded to in some of the comments, we're driving on the roads over these pipes now.
Correct.
And realistically, the problem has two parts, which is if something breaks in this area, what's it going to cost to repair? And that probability doesn't change whether you move it or you don't.
True.
So then it just becomes, okay, what are we putting over this? And you could engineer something like 147th and Ravinia, which is a fairly complex roundabout, but as you said, there's no utilities under it, hence the reason it was probably done. Or at 153rd and West, which is a far simpler centerpiece for the intersection. And you're thinking more 153rd and West, correct, in terms of the design of this thing?
151st.
Right.
Right, so yes, that's exactly.
I'm sorry, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah, 151st
my
and
fault.
West. So, Mayor, based on staff discussion we've had, it will be a couple degrees down than what we have outside, but maybe a little bit higher quality because of Ravinia Avenue corridor that we have, but it will definitely not be how it is outside,
No,
especially the four.
Yeah, good visual, thank you, Khurshid. So to me, the question is, do we spend $800 now, or do we say, we're not gonna spend $800,000 now and maybe have an additional $50,000 in 25 years? Because if the pipe breaks in 25 years, we're no worse off for having moved it now, other than we're down 800 grand. And then Public Works in the future is gonna have to break $20,000 worth of concrete. I'm pretty sure that the simple decision is build it simply and let's just let these pipes do what they're doing currently without moving them. That saves 800 grand if I'm doing the math right. Anybody want to weigh in? Just a
Yes.
quick consensus to give staff direction. Trustee Leafblood?
Mr. Mayor, I do, as I've, and thank you, because thank you, Khursheed, you've given us such a good representation of what it is. What stood out to me is that in 35 years, the roundabout may need to be redone anyway. It may have, and so to that end, I would say, since we don't have an indication that there's a concern with the current pipes, my thought would be, let's save the $800,000 and not spend that now. Build the simpler roundabout, and then let's say in 35 years, when it's time for all that pipeline to be replaced, we'll be at a point where it could be a larger term project because everything can be redone.
Any other comments or thoughts? Just
Mr.
quick.
Mayor,
Trustee Lawrence?
I agree with Joanna and your characterization. Khursheed, you didn't reveal your hand to us, perhaps to allow us to think it through, but I'm leaning in that direction.
Which is, go ahead with it, simplify the engineering of the roundabout, leave the utilities as is. Is that a fair synopsis?
I think it makes sense.
Trustee Malani, Trustee Healy, perspective?
Mr. Mayor, I agree with your summary.
My name is Mike Malani, and I agree with this message.
That's funny, Mike. Thank you for that.
I agree as
Trustee
well.
Katsinas? All
That
right.
risk is worth the reward.
So, Khursheed, does that give you direction from the board?
That's perfect. Actually, it will expedite our design now because we don't have to make this change, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do the fingers crossed on this one or a probability estimate, but put it in the files. Thank you. Next item, please.
Service Delivery Review RFP, Village Manager.
Mayor and Village Board, so as you know, the village is a service provider. We don't manufacture anything. We provide a wide range of essential public services, and these include emergency services, utilities, public works, and of course more. And it's aimed at fulfilling the village's mission, which is to enhance the quality of life of those who live, work, and visit Orland Park. Those that rely on the village services want responsive, high-performing services without substantial increases to costs. So in 2023, as part of our leadership development program, the village took part in the Q12 Gallup Employee Engagement Survey. So Gallup has measured employee engagement across thousands of organizations using this survey, this 12-point survey. So what the survey does is it measures employee perspectives on a number of crucial elements of workplace culture. So what they've found is that engaged employees have higher well-being, better retention, lower absenteeism, and higher satisfaction, which all leads to greater service delivery. So looking at these results, the results went from very low in police to 65th percentile. Now, number one here doesn't mean good. It's the opposite, which being in the first place means that 99% of the employers that Gallup has surveyed have higher engagement than ours. So basically we had in the police the lowest engagement, and then you can see it kind of went up slightly. As I mentioned, having engaged employees is very important to great service delivery. So with the renewed emphasis on service delivery, what we are proposing is to undertake a service delivery RFP. And it's to bring in a consultant who's going to help us look at all facets of our service delivery operations. Something like this was considered in 23. We actually did a RFP. It was issued for an org assessment in the police department. We got 8 great proposals, but at the time, the then village board opted not to proceed with the assessment. So like I said, with the renewed emphasis, we're looking to get direction to issue this RFP, and get the proposals, analyze them, and see if we can incorporate this into our, like I said, renewed service delivery process. We have some money that's budgeted for an employee compensation review. This will be more, and we'll just, once we get all of the proposals, we'll weigh those costs and then determine next steps. If you can just go back. The RFP is going to be divided into two parts. Police is a very unique animal, so they're going to have a different type of service review, and then village-wide. So we will have two parts of it. It'll be one consultant, two parts, but it will have the same goal, and that goal is to how do we increase engagement so that we can increase our mission, which is, again, to enhance the quality of life of those who visit, work, and shop here in Orland Park. So that's a brief summary, and I'm available for questions.
Comments or questions? George, so your specific request is to just simply go back to the market and update these RFPs, given what we just discussed?
Correct.
And then the intention is for this data, where we're talking directly to employees and it's comparative to other places, that's feedback for you and the chief as we continue to make evolutions and advancements. That's the goal?
That's the goal.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani?
actually, I do have a comment and a couple questions. I mean, if you recall, we've had discussions about this in the past and recently, right? And I was pretty much in support of these. While, we looked at the results and we're one of the best in the state, we are. However, I think there's 49 other states, right? And I think we can always have room to improve.
Correct.
And become even better. And the same not only goes for the police department, we can learn things from others, but so can the village, right? And I think, this is a good way to assess where we're at today. I mean, we've improved a ton in our process and procedure and our organization, but, I look at the proposals and I know we're talking about $80,000. We might be asking for a lot for $80,000 based on the proposal. And I think it's gonna possibly be a lot more than that.
Right.
So is there, maybe we can split this out into two parts where we take the 80,000 that we have and do part one, and then budget the rest maybe to complete it next year. That way it's actually part of the budget process, so we're not doing yet another budget amendment to squeeze this in at the end of the year.
Yeah, and once we get the proposals back, then we'll have an idea as far as costs, and maybe we do start off with the police, for example, and then move on to the rest of the organization next year. It's just really going to depend on what we get back.
I'd say, yeah, whichever one that we could, we have the 80,000, let's use that, and then next year pick up the second part, because I just.
George, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you there, Trustee Malani. George, why don't we then just make that requirement in the RFP that we may choose to do a phase one, phase two?
Got it.
So at least the consultants know how they should bid, or it gives us the options based on the cost.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Lawrence?
George, is there any reason that there wouldn't be an option to find entities that are very focused on doing this sort of evaluation for police, and that there's other organizations that are very focused on non-police? And is it possible that that combination might result in greater expertise and potentially lower cost in total?
Yeah, that's a great question. And fortunately, when we did the RFP for the 2023 police assessment RFP, the firms that submitted, I think 6 or 7 out of the 8 they had different sections within their firms that did different parts. So they had a police part, and then they had different organizational parts. Only 1 or 2 were strictly for police. And and those 1 or 2 were not even on our top 3 anyway. So there's probably going to be some cost savings when it's going to be one firm to get the whole project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Leaflet,
I moved, are we ready for a motion?
is there any other comments or questions from the board?
I move to recommend staff proceed with the issuance of a request for proposal to initiate the selection of a qualified entity to perform a comprehensive service delivery review for the Village of Orland Park.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any last comments? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Leaflet,
Aye.
trustee Malani,
Aye.
trustee Lawrence,
Aye.
trustee Healy,
Aye.
trustee Katsinas,
Aye.
Mayor Dodge.
Aye.
Proceed to the debt service program, update on debt program, 2025 GO bonds and reimbursement for capital finance.
George, why don't we just, are you presenting or didn't have the?
We're going to ask Bob and Andrew. Bob Lewis, Andrew Kim are with PMA Securities. They have been the village's financial advisor since 2020. Financial advisor is a specific role whenever a government entity issues debt. In our case, we sell bonds. So Bob's going to give an overview of our debt profile and kind of talk about some of our next steps.
Thanks. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having Andrew and I here tonight. I will present the first 9 or so pages and turn it over to Andrew to do the back half of the presentation. So our goal here tonight is to give you an overview of the current debt profile of the village, and then to also go give you an overview of the financing plans for 2025 and beyond. Okay. So at this point in time, the district's outstanding debt is just around $91 million. And the last time you issued debt in 2023, $4 million of that was for water, sewer, and stormwater projects to be paid from the water and wastewater fund. $7.9 million was for corporate fund projects to be repaid from the general governmental funds, which we've abbreviated GGF. Previously, the GGF revenue sources was a mixture of property taxes and general fund revenues. Prior to the issuance of the 23 bonds, the village did pass ordinances to implement 2 new revenue sources to cover the capital plan and other needs. This included an allocation of a portion of that new revenue to the repayment of bonds to be issued between 2023 and 27. Those 2 new revenue sources was the utility tax on natural gas and electric services, and increasing the home real sales tax by 0.05%. So the total amount of revenues to be dedicated to the repayment of GGF sourced debt, it was $7.6 million on an annual basis. This slide gives you a summary of the overview, a summary of the district's debt plans from FY23 and beyond. So you have governmental projects listed there totaling $51.4 million, TIF-related projects in the pipeline of $92 million for a total of $143.4 million. And then water, sewer, stormwater system projects totaling $17 million. And that's on debt issued by the village. You still have your share of the Oakland Regional System debt. So total amount of projects to be financed that were in the works was $160 million. Because the 2024 bonds were not issued, we anticipate the 25 issuance would be about $41 million to cover projects that were started in 2024, those started in 25 and finished in 25. So by the end of 27, if the village were to proceed with all these plans, the total village debt might be as high as $250 million, broken out with about 210 from the GGF and TIF revenue sources, and then 41 million from water, sewer, and stormwater.
Question, Bob, for you or for George. What's the story on 24 bonds weren't issued?
You know, Chris, they weren't issued in 24 and they weren't issued in early 25. What's the deal there?
We were directed to wait till after the election.
Okay. So we held off, there was the decision to hold off.
Correct.
Okay.
So what were the projects originally intended to be issued and financed as part of the 24 bonds? So the 24 bonds were to not only be issued to complete the financing of those projects, they were going to reimburse the village for some proceeds already spent. And the projects are listed here as follows. You have the police training facility, athletics maintenance facility, CPAC, road and ditch program, and neighborhood road improvement program totaling $22 million. And then you had water, sewer, and stormwater projects, water main replacement, the relining program, water tower aesthetics and modernization program, storm ditch repairs, and storm improvements, totaling $13.3 million. So total projects were $35.4 million to be started in '24. They weren't all, not everything would be completed in '24, but that's the amount that would be started. Of that 35.4, 26.1 million was to be financed. The rest would come from funds on hand, either in the water and sewer system for those projects or from the general fund. So the reimbursement requirement. So as a reminder, when you sell your bonds to finance your capital projects, you designate them as being tax exempt whenever possible. What that means is your investors who receive interest payments from you do not have to pay taxes on those interest payments. So they're getting a tax break from the federal government, but you are implicitly getting a federal subsidy because the interest rate that you borrow at is somewhere around 1.25% to 1.5% lower than if you had to sell the bonds on a taxable basis. But because of that implicit subsidy, there's a lot of rules that have to be followed, and one of those is on reimbursement. You can't just decide yourself to, you know what, that project we did 2 years ago, we spent cash on, let's reimburse ourselves now. You can't just do that without having previously declaring your intent to do so, and then there's rules that follow from there. So the village passed a reimbursement resolution December 4th, 2023, didn't obligate the village to reimburse. It gave you a possibility to reimburse with tax-exempt proceeds that you would keep in the file in the event that the IRS were ever to select your bond issue for audit. So this allows then you to reimburse yourself for any expense made 60 days prior to the adoption of that resolution. So you go back to the beginning of October of 23, and the plan was, in the past, we'd issue bonds right at the beginning of the next year. There was a shift in philosophy to wait and to get a little further into the year before we'd issue those bonds and not have to do it right at the beginning of the year, and that's the flexibility the reimbursement resolution would give you. In that reimbursement resolution, though, it stated the list of projects that you were undertaking that you would want to reimburse yourself for. There was a not to exceed amount inserted of $7.8 million. So the subsequent delays in the issuance of the 24 bonds led to expenditures from funds to be reimbursed to exceed that $7.8 million. So as a result, that limits then how much that you can reimburse from the tax-exempt bond proceeds, because you're now up to about $15 million that you spent that was going to be reimbursed. So for consideration tonight in the action agenda of your business meeting is another reimbursement resolution that acknowledges the prior one, but it increases the amount to a much larger amount. You could put $200 million in a reimbursement resolution. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean you're going to do $200 million. It just means you can't go over whatever number it is that you have in there. So the resolution for consideration tonight is going to have a higher amount. Unfortunately, though, what that higher amount does, it allows you to go back 60 days from tonight. So anything that you paid out in May and June that you'd want to be reimbursed for, this new resolution would cover that. So you're going to have a hole, if you will. You'll be able to reimburse up to that $7.8 million until you hit that point. And then you have a period of time where you made expenditures, you won't be reimbursed yourself, and then you can be reimbursed yourself again for items 60 days from tonight, okay? Now, that $7.8 million is for quote-unquote hard costs. You can add additional amounts to that for things that we generally call soft costs, preliminary expenditures like architectural, engineering fees of that nature that are not part of that 7.8 million. So it's going to take your number higher. We're working with the administration to come up with that number. And I believe the preliminary calculation for May and June was about $1.5 million that we'd be able to reimburse ourselves for that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't pass this resolution. So between the 7.8, the $1.5 million, and then the soft costs, we're hoping to get somewhere around $10 million or so that you'd be able to reimburse yourself with tax-exempt proceeds. So you'd be short roughly $5 to $6 million, depending on how the final numbers come out. So what's one of the options you could do? Well, you could always issue taxable bonds to reimburse yourself. It just means you can't issue them on a tax-exempt basis. But as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that comes at a cost of additional interest expense. That we estimate that to be an additional $1.5 million. Here we've calculated around 0.7% of additional true interest cost, depending on how, because at different points on the yield curve, depending on how you're selling the bonds, the penalty for tax exemption or taxable debt varies. Well, the village, working with the administration, the village is committed to trying to find a way to reimburse yourself without having to issue taxable bonds. And the reason you're able to do that is because every year, you always have a certain amount of your capital projects you plan to do as pay-go, meaning to use annual revenues to pay for those capital projects. And because of that, that gives you the flexibility then to say, well, that project that we were going to do, that project XYZ, that we were going to use pay-as-you-go revenues, well, we haven't done that yet, so we're just going to borrow for that project and then use those pay-and-go revenues to reimburse ourselves. Now, you may be able to do all this self-reimbursement, if you will, in this fiscal year. It may bleed over into the next fiscal year. But by doing that sort of adjustment by what you're going to use pay-go and then what you borrow for, you should be able to get back to what you were intending to do originally without having to issue taxable bonds. So this slide is a graphical representation then of the annual debt service payments to be paid from the GGF revenue source. If you recall from the prior page, that was $7.6 million that was going to be dedicated to it. And that's represented by the red line. The blue bars represent debt that's currently outstanding right now. And then the orange bars represent debt that is to be issued from to be paid from those revenue sources that we've categorized as GGF. The original plan was to not go right to the red line all in 1 year, to work your way up to that red line. And then the orange bars represent those future payments. Now you notice there's a few years that are above the red line, the target. That was intentional because when we sold the 23 bonds, the market was extremely volatile at that time. The original intent was to do a longer financing, and we shortened that up to get a better rate and to get more bidders on your bond issue, knowing that it would cause you to exceed the red line those years, but you have bonds that are callable before then that we can adjust the payment schedule of those to fit everything below the red line before you get to that point in time. We have several years until that point, but the plan is to readjust at a certain point when hopefully the market is better than it was in 23. This slide shows you the annual payments with the TIF bonds being layered in. In the event that the TIFs didn't perform as planned and you had to pay the debt service on those, because historically the village has used GO bonds to pay for the TIF improvements. And the reason for that is the interest rate on GO bonds is, what do we have, 2.5% less? Yeah, 2% less? Okay, thank you. Than if you did TIF revenue bonds without the GO backing. So that additional 2% in interest rate that you would pay on this would result in millions of dollars of additional interest paid. So it's a trade-off. You can get more value, have the TIF produce better sooner if you sell the bonds as GO bonds by keeping that interest component lower, but it does shift some of the risk from you from the TIF developments, or I shouldn't say from you, to you from the TIF developments by issuing the bonds as GO debt. So we wanted you to be aware of that risk in the event that none of them materialized and they weren't producing revenues to pay for the debt service. Your risk is the green bars being stacked on top of the other bars. So the next part of the presentation is going to shift to the water, sewer, and stormwater, which I'm going to hand the baton over to Andrew here in a moment. But before I do that, perhaps, are there any questions on the reimbursement or the GGF debt, or did you want me to wait to the end, Mayor? Is it fine to pause now? Let Andrew present?
Yeah, let Andrew go through this and then, because it adds to the total picture. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor and Village Board. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of both the water and sewer debt as well as the MST TIF debt, the Main Street Triangle TIF debt that's still outstanding. So the water and sewer debt plan includes periodic borrowings, includes periodic borrowings through fiscal year 2026, which can include, I believe it's $8 million this year and $9 million next year for a total of $17 million over the next 2 years. The pro forma that we've created does include the village's obligation for the Oak Lawn water system debt, but it's not exactly a firm number because, as you may know, the Oak Lawn regional water system debt includes other communities, and it could add more communities or subtract communities as plans change. The most recent update that we've received in November included the addition of Olympia Fields, Madison, and Country Club Hills. And of course, adding those communities allows the village's portion of the debt to be reduced, because the debt spread over a larger number of communities. The pro forma also includes pay-go capital that the village will pay on an annual basis for projects as they occur. And we have allocated anywhere from $3.3 million in 2025 to $7 million in 2027 to finance the pay-go capital. So you're not borrowing for those capital projects. And the last point here is that the village is planning its next 5-year rate study to be in effect for 2028. So this is the graphical representation of not only the debt that's going to be issued, not only the debt that is currently outstanding, but also the debt that's going to be issued over the next 2 years, and the pay-go capital. So the yellow bars up there are not debt payments; they are pay-go payments for projects as they occur. So you can see that we are kind of honoring that revenue constraint that we are expecting the water system to generate, and making sure that all of the payments, whether they are debt payments or pay-go payments, to fit under the revenue constraint. The last section here is going to be on the TIF-related debt, or the MST TIF-related debt. So the village's 2021B and 2021C bonds are the two outstanding bonds related to the village's MST TIF. Both bond series were structured to accommodate available TIF revenues, including revenues from a ground lease agreement made with the University of Chicago Medical Center for $770,000 annually, but it does begin to decrease in fiscal year 2032. The MST TIF fund is scheduled to produce deficits in the amount of just under $100,000 annually from fiscal year 29 to 2033, but this was also planned or foreseen. In order to accommodate that deficit of $100,000, just under $100,000, the 2021 bonds include a call date in 2028 to address the deficit. So when we get to that call date, we can refinance that debt and make sure it comes under, the debt payments are then lower than the available revenues in the MST TIF. An important point to note here is that in the fall of 2024, the village did authorize a debt write-off owed by the MST TIF fund to the general fund and the home rule sales tax fund. So this is just a graphical representation. Generally speaking, you can see that we did structure the bond payments to fall under the revenue constraint that's available for the MST TIF. Again, slight deficits in those 5 years between, looks like 2030 to 2033. And with that, this is the last slide of our presentation, and then we can answer any follow-up questions you might have. This slide lays out some next steps that are important for the village as you consider your bonding plans. So tonight, at tonight's meeting, we are going to ask the village to adopt the new reimbursement resolution that Bob discussed. We anticipate that the village's annual comprehensive financial report, what we call the ACFR for fiscal year 2024, will be prepared. And that will allow us then to get a rating for the village, which we anticipate would not change. It is currently at a AA+, which is the second highest possible rating. We anticipate that it'll be the same, although no promises. We would have the rating call in late September, receive the credit rating in early October. Then the board meeting following that, the board would approve a parameters ordinance, and it's essentially authorizing the village to sell bonds. We would then hold the bond sale on October 7th, and then the bond closing on October 28th, and that's the date where the funds would hit the village bank accounts.
George, before we open this up for conversation, I just want to make sure that I heard this right. And the reason we prepared this item is we wanted to get to the fact set about where we are on debt. So make sure I got my numbers right. We're $90 million in debt now. We have to issue $40 million in the near future, right? Because it wasn't done in 24 or early 25. And if we follow the current plan, we could add on top of that another $160 million worth of debt.
Correct.
My sequence of my numbers right?
Well, the $160 million does include the $41 million that we are planning to issue. Correct?
Okay, so then it's 90 plus 160, so 250.
Yes.
Okay, so just wanted to make sure we got that fact set out there. And the open conversation for the board is if we follow the current projected plan on here, do we want to follow this plan because it adds another $160 million worth of debt? That's the policy question. On top of the 90, correct?
Correct.
George, did I miss anything?
Nope, you're exactly right, and that's, the 24-25 debt almost has to happen now. It was supposed to happen a year and a half ago, the first, but then you know, moving forward, you know, it's just, how do we move forward, that's all.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Katsinas?
I could ask you on page 4 of your presentation. If you could do the slide, we don't see it. Oh, there you go. Thank you. A lot of these are assumptions, correct? I mean, we approved one TIF for $33 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, of which that TIF was going to be paid back in multiple years or distributed within like 3 years or something over the course of a couple of years. We were going to do it, we were going to release it as phases in the project were done. Correct?
So Trustee Katsinas, that's correct. It
Okay,
was,
so my question to you is, where did you get all these numbers at? Like, you're getting all these numbers here, because there's a lot of assumptions being made that this board has not voted on. You know, there's a lot of assumptions with TIFs in here that they were ideas, but they were ideas. There was no commitment. It certainly didn't start the process. We had limited board discussion, but it certainly didn't go through the process. So again, did you receive these from staff based on projects we talked about? Or I guess I'm a little unclear. All these big numbers here, like I think all of our eyeballs are opening up.
Yes, this information is received from staff about projects that were in the pipeline.
Okay, so projects that are not yet approved by this board.
That's correct.
Okay, so a lot of assumptions. And so we want to get money back from bonds or get our money, some money, but yet, you know, this is more of a question for George. We have no plan of what our projects are for 2025.
we do. So the 5-year financial plan included this whole debt that we're issuing for governmental projects was all part of the 5-year financial plan that ends in 27.
Okay, and some of the things that were mentioned in 2024, I thought they were already paid for. I thought we paid for them already. It's not like we'd do the project without paying for them. Otherwise, we'd have overdue notices, you know.
You've been paying for them, but the intent was to reimburse yourself for many of those expenditures when the bonds were issued. So if you don't reimburse yourself for those, your fund balances will be lower than you intended when you started those projects.
Okay. Okay, and then as far as what did we write off on that TIF that you had presented? I think you're,
Yeah, you passed an ordinance, throughout the years, the village had created interfund loans between the general fund and this home rule sales tax fund to the Main Street TIF, with the thought that over time, the Main Street TIF would pay off the bonds, and then it would start repaying the village for those loans. Well, the village wrote off those loans and essentially said they will not be repaid.
and the dollar amount was, I think,
Oh, it's not in here?
47 million.
$47 million.
47 million. That's why there's a hesitancy for TIFs. You know, the one we did certainly approve at 33 million, but we have not approved any other TIFs. So I think a lot of the projections are, if this full board agrees to go forward with TIFs, this is like having everything in the candy store,
Yeah,
which we did not vote on yet, to be very clear.
Yeah,
This
none of
board
those have
did
been
not
voted on, but those are if the projects that were, the administration community were
Projects
under
that were discussed.
consideration, and if you were to proceed as previously planned, this would be the ultimate outcome.
But
So you
still,
have a
that
chance
is-
to take action on most of what's late set forth on slide 4. None of that's committed to yet, essentially,
It's
except
not-
for what's in 24 and 25.
Correct, it's not committed, and this board would have a say in TIFs going forward. So this is
Exactly.
if we did everything that was on the books, that was ever talked about, this is like the worst-case scenario.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Leafblad?
I heard that there was a 5-year plan. When was the 5-year plan implemented and what did it include?
So the first year of the 5-year plan, the 5-year plan was approved in 2027, or 2020, I'm sorry, 2023. And it included, well, it included just that. It included assumptions regarding operating costs moving forward. It approved assumptions regarding revenue moving forward. And then it approved projects, capital projects going forward. So a number of capital projects that were displayed here were as part of that. The Centennial Park West was part of that. And so then what happens is all of those figures were put together, and then, of course, revenues were much lower than expenditures. So the board at the time did implement 2 new revenue sources, a utility tax and a 0.5 point, as Bob said, a 0.5 point increase on the home rule sales tax.
2 taxes on the residents.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And so that's where Bob and Andrew were showing our $7.6 million debt, that red line. Going forward for our general fund projects, governmental projects, we can't exceed that because that's the money we've set aside for bond payments. And so, long story short, it comes from the 5-year financial plan.
Okay. And just a follow-up question, how much of it has already been done and how much do we have the option of reconsidering or not going forward, of reconsidering?
Yeah, so if we can go back to slide 4, I think 26 and 27, as far as governmental projects or things that could be reevaluated, but 24 and 25 is already, for all intents and purposes, have been spent.
24 and 25 include Centennial Park West and also the training, the range for the police officers, and what else does that include?
Well, as far as, so the Centennial Park West was part of the 23 debt that was mentioned, that there was a debt issuance in 23. So in 24, it does include the training center. Maybe we go to that slide that had a couple of those, right there.
Right there.
So those are the projects that are to be funded through the 24 bonds.
And they're already done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Trustee Healy?
George, I've heard, I haven't seen anything, but this new building I've heard that we plan to do for Public Works, am I using 17 million as a cost of that building?
I believe
I mean, that's not even in these numbers.
It is. It is in the 26, the debt issuance in 26 is when that was envisioned.
And so we could easily push that off. I mean, it could be pushed down the road.
That is an absolute policy decision. Yeah.
Without that. So I mean, there's options to do, conditions change, and so on. I do have another question for you, just from your observations, because I think you guys follow it closer than I do. The interest rate, as far as I know, was supposed to, they always talked about the Fed chairman and all that, but everybody's been expecting the rates to come down, and there's no foreseeable, not in the next 2 months or 3 months, but I guess, should I say, in your non-certified opinion or whatever, the next move is going to be down.
Yes, more than likely, the Fed will be cutting rates when they do take action, but a little bit about interest rates. You know, we generally talk about interest rates like it's just one rate, but it's really, you know, the yield curve of rates, and the Fed is cutting rates on the shortest end of the yield curve. And the area of the curve where you guys borrow is the medium long-term rates. And just because the Fed cuts the shortest rate doesn't mean your cost of capital is going to go down when they do that. I mean, the market's already factored in to some extent what they expect the Fed to do in 25 and 26. And what we've seen this year is short-term rates have actually started to come down more, but medium long-term rates have gone up. The yield curve is steepening. And a lot of that has to do with the concern with the additional budget deficits that will occur at the federal government, that there'll be more borrowing by the U.S. Treasury, putting more pressure on medium long-term rates. So that's one of the reasons that we've seen rates go up on the long end. And, you know, if the market could have almost the opposite effect that the administration wants if the Fed were to start lowering rates, because if the market's really concerned that lowering the rates could be inflationary with the other things going on, then the market may raise medium long-term rates at the same time the Fed's lowering short-term rates. So all we can tell you right now is if you were to issue debt today, a 20-year financing probably be around 4.5% or so, and the borrowing 2 or 3 months from now, I would anticipate you'd probably be something close to that, but you know, there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the market that could cause long-term rates to start to go up a little bit more, even if the Fed is expected to cut rates.
Okay, well, thanks. That's an interesting answer. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Katsinas?
I think it'd be very helpful if the whole board got a copy of the 2025 proposed capital projects that these bonds would fund. You know, because we're talking, this wasn't the Public Works building, I remember talking about it, but was not aware that it was already put in there. So if we could get a list so that we can digest it and see what we can and cannot do and kind of watch our budget.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll, and we'll also, we'll resend the 5-year financial.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee,
Can we also get the information about this TIF? I never saw those costs before on these TIF districts. I don't know where they came from.
George, what TIFs are in that number?
So the TIFs that are in that number, so the then board improved inducement resolutions for the former PDs 2, the former Terry Lincoln, and the former Andrew Corporation site. So those TIFs are in there, and they were committed. A commitment was made for general obligation bonds.
The commitment was made for general obligation bonds. I thought it was just an exploratory for seeing if it's feasible or whatever. And that's what this is. So, but still, the value of the cost of everything, I don't remember any numbers being attached to that. So in here you had, the Andrew Corporation one was, I forget how much was in for that one. But there's on those, Well, on those new TIFs, I don't ever recall seeing a cost estimate, so.
George, it's my understanding when we do an inducement resolution, there's a number, correct?
So the inducement resolution in these situations did not have numbers. They were, what they were is promised, kind of, they set in motion when the TIF does get approved, similar to what we're going to be doing later tonight, a reimbursement resolution. So when the TIF does get approved, the costs between when the inducement resolution was approved and once the TIF is created, those costs for the developer as well as for the village could be reimbursed.
Okay, I think that as a follow-up to this, right, because I think you guys have laid out a timeline of what we need to do. There's another motion we'll need to take in a second on that, not the inducement, the reimbursement resolution, which we must do. George, I think there's some additional facts you should flow to the full board, given the questions we've had.
Sure, absolutely.
And, I think that this is exactly what I was hoping would happen tonight, which is we got the clarity that we could, if we follow this plan, if we cast all these votes, then we could be looking at $250 million worth of debt in as little as 5 years. So I'm pretty sure 250 million is $250 million, but you guys check me on the math. And so this is the conversation to the board. I would say this is the conversation I wanted to have. The facts are out there, and we're going to have to, as a board, decide what do we want to do. So this is where it could go. I want to say we're not committed to this by any stretch to some of the trustees' comments, but we're going to have to kind of pick through this in the budget and our future planning, which is how much debt do we want to put the village into. So I appreciate, George, or any other facts or details you want to bring to the board?
Nope. The next item is absolutely related to what
Thank you.
was described.
If I could make one comment about the reimbursement resolution, just keep in mind that amount that's in there doesn't obligate you to reimburse that amount. You just can't go above that amount. So you're really incentivized to make it a very large number so you don't ever run into a situation where you pass too small of a number. So I just want to make that clear that you're not obligating yourself to do the amount that's in that resolution.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we have one more item for the committee of the whole. We're going to take that, then take a quick break, and we'll be right back for the Board of Trustees. So call the next item, please.
Consideration and action on a resolution expressing official intent regarding certain capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of one or more obligations to be issued by the village. Finance.
Is there a motion and a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Leafblad? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Lawrence, excuse me.
I move to recommend to the village board to pass a resolution entitled Resolution Expressing Official Intent Regarding Certain Capital Expenditures to be Reimbursed from Proceeds of One or More Obligations to be issued by the Village of Orland Park, Cook and Will Counties, Illinois.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Trustee Lawrence?
Aye.
Trustee Leafblat?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Dodge?
Aye. Anybody sign that? This is the time of the agenda, so if you could come up and introduce yourself. Wait, just come up to the microphone, sir. Thanks.
I'm Michael Henry. Hadn't planned on speaking in this meeting, but I'm actually disgusted and confused about all these numbers we just got. I'd like to know how the previous board passed all these tax increases that pay for all of this stuff that they're saying, but everybody's denying any knowledge of it. So how did we get sales tax increases? How did we get utility taxes on our seniors and the rest to collect $7 to $8 million a year in taxes that the board is now telling us they had no knowledge of it was? So how did we vote for all of that? How did you just vote to randomly raise the taxes of the people in this village and now say, we see how it's planned to be spent, but you don't know anything about it? And then I questioned the debt and the timing of holding this off. Since this has started and we've been bombarded with political and everything else, the Orland Township Republicans and everything, we lowered the debt $50 million. And that was acceptable because when Keith Peacock first came in, the village owed $110 million. It was paid off by $97.50, paid down to $60 million. We have been told, and every taxpayer has been told, that the debt is at $60 million. We are now sitting in a meeting being told, oh, miraculously, we didn't issue the bonds to cover it up for the election, that we spent $30 million. We didn't tell the taxpayers that the debt was increased to by $30 million. And we've been lied to by the government that we elected. Explain this to us. How did you put all these taxes on us and not have any idea what it was being spent for and the reason for it? And then you've just turned around and added a sales tax again, and now you're turning around and replacing the Pritzker tax. I have no more comments, but we all deserve some answers on this.
All right, thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and
So moved.
Second.
it's a motion and a second. Can we do a voice vote? Or a roll call? Roll call. Roll call, please.
Trustee Katsina?
Aye.
Trustee Leaflet?
Aye.
Trustee Lawrence?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Malani? Mayor Dodge?
Aye. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
German time